Welcome, I'm Rabbi Phil Bressler of Beit Am in Corvallis, Oregon, and this is the daily summary video for the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch Yomi Daily Halakha Learning Project, covering the passage from Siman 93 Seif 1 to Siman 94 Seif 2. You can find links to the Hebrew and English text of this passage and to the calendar of upcoming passages in this video's description. We're on to a new topic today, which is childbirth on Shabbat. So one can summon a midwife immediately when the pregnant person shows signs of going into labor, even if the distance that midwife is going to have to cover is great. A pregnant person at childbirth is considered a critically ill patient, and you may violate Shabbat for whatever they require. The critical period begins when water breaks, or if that person is in the spot where birthing is going to happen, either the birthing stool, or I suppose today that would mean in the bed or bathtub or wherever the birthing is going to happen. The critical period then continues for 3 days after birth, even if the person who gave birth says that it's unnecessary to break Shabbat for them, we do it anyway. And the critical period can extend up to 7 days if the person who's given birth feels that it's necessary. It sounds like the days are counted Kitzat Hayom Kechulo, which means that a part of the day is like all of it, but it's also not transgressing if you choose to count full 24-hour periods. After these 7 days until the end of the first 30 days, so you can see a parallel here between the periods of mourning, Shiva and Shloshim. So after 7 days until the first 30 days, the person who gave birth is considered a non-critical patient. Their needs on Shabbat can be met only through the agency of a non-Jew. One exception, though, is heating the house if that person is cold. A Jew can apparently do this if necessary, because everyone is considered ill with regard to cold. Finally, the newborn infant can be washed. Normally we don't bathe on Shabbat, but you can wash a newborn. The umbilical cord can be cut. Normally cutting would be malacha, but we can do this. And all the infant's other needs can be taken care of on Shabbat. One difficult exception is that if the newborn is non-viable, in other words, it's certain they're not going to survive very long, you can't do anything for them. You can't violate Shabbat for them. And it seems like that's because there's no life that's considered at risk if that infant's death is sadly inevitable. We're going to begin to talk about yet another new topic here in this same video, which is the topic of Eruvei Chatzerot. So I recommend going back and checking out the videos on Simanim 81 and 82, which cover the 4 types of domains, and also Melacha number 39, which is carrying on Shabbat, if you have it already. Otherwise, this won't make very much sense. So Siman 94 discusses a mechanism called Eruv Chatzerot. So Eruv means mixing, as in mixing different domains to become one single private domain. And Chatzerot are courtyards. A Chatzer is a courtyard, Chatzerot, more than one courtyard. So the predominant urban housing arrangement in the rabbinic period, when this halakha was worked out, involved multiple private apartments surrounding a shared courtyard. Now, courtyards would sometimes exit directly out to the street below. And I'm going to put a diagram on the screen to show you what I mean. So sometimes courtyards would exit directly out to the streets. Sometimes multiple courtyards would share an exit out to the streets. And here's another diagram to show what that might look like. Or sometimes multiple courtyard complexes would exit to an alley, which would serve then as a passageway out to the street. And here's yet one more diagram to show you what that would look like. Essentially, infinite variations existed on this model. These are really just simplified diagrams for us to get a sense of what would have been, I think, a pretty intuitive understanding for people in the ancient world. So the courtyard complex setup made for an effective use of space and provided adequate privacy in that semi-public courtyard, but they also present some issues related to carrying on Shabbat. So individual apartments are each their own private domain because they're owned by different owners. The courtyard is also its own private domain because it's not trafficked by the general public and it's enclosed. Note the alleyway in that third diagram is considered a Carmelite. The laws of carrying there are complex, and the Kitzur won't actually discuss them at all, so don't worry about that. Note, the Actual malacha of carrying is transferring between domains of different types. So you might not, so carrying from your apartment into the courtyard wouldn't be doing the actual malacha itself, but a rabbinic prohibition was put in place that outlaws carrying between different private domains, and especially into and out of courtyards because of the ease with which that would slide into just carrying outright into the public or into a Carmelite's like the alleyway. Now, the way to get around this prohibition is, as I've mentioned, by mixing or really combining multiple private domains into one. The actual ritual for doing this is not going to be covered until tomorrow. But right now, the Kitzur is going to explain what sorts of conditions would necessitate making an Eruv Chatzerot. So, if 2 or more Jews live in apartments around one courtyard, they can't carry into or out of that courtyard. Even if 2 Jews live in adjacent apartments, they can't carry directly between those apartments. Say there's a door between them, those are still separate domains, they can't carry back and forth between them. Note the implication here is if only 1 Jew lives in a courtyard complex, Eruv Chatzerot isn't necessary. There's no one to combine with. That means that lone Jew can carry into their courtyard even without an Eruv. I think the Talmud on this, if I recall my rabbinical school class correctly, basically says, though, don't live in such an arrangement. It's not safe to live as the only Jew in surrounded by non-Jews, which is a fairly bleak statement for that time on the opinion they had of their non-Jewish neighbors, but it is what it is. If 2 courtyard complexes are connected by a doorway between them, or some other sufficiently large portal, if each complex makes its own Eruv, they can't carry between them. They can carry into their own courtyards, but not between them. 2 complexes, though, can make one joint Eruv to enable carrying all around between them, and we'll go into more details about what that might look like tomorrow. That's all for today, however. As always, our learning is dedicated to Rabbi Shlomo Gansfried, the author of the Kitzur, and the historic Jewish community of Uzhhorod, Ukraine. See you tomorrow.